In this video, we're going to start moving towards being able to prove L'Hopital's rule. But before we do that, we need to make a brief recall of a term that we know from our calculus days. So if we know that the limit of f of x as x approaches c is equal to the limit of g of x as x approaches c, and it is equal to 0. So if we know that both of those are equal to 0, then the limit of their quotient, f of x over g of x as x approaches c, is called an indeterminate form. So that's an indeterminate form. We know from our calculus days that we can maybe apply L'Hopital's rule here. However, why does L'Hopital's rule work? We need to establish that. We need to make sure that we believe that it's true. And so to do that, we are going to look at and establish the Cauchy mean value theorem that will be used in the proof of L'Hopital's rule. So let's let f and g be continuous functions on a closed interval a to b and differentiable on the open interval a to b. Then there exists at least one point c in that open interval such that the difference between the two function values at the endpoints times g prime of c is equal to the difference between the two function values of g at the two endpoints times f prime of c. All right, so let's prove this. And the way that we are going to prove this is we will let h of x be equal to f of b minus f of a times g of x minus g of b minus g of a times f of x for x living in the closed interval from a to b. Then what can we say about h? Well, then h is continuous on that closed interval, and it's differentiable on the open interval from a to b. Furthermore, we know that h of a, or we can observe that h of a is equal to f of b g of a minus g of b f of a. And we can also observe that h of b is exactly the same thing, f of b g of a minus g of b f of a. So those two things are exactly the same. Thus, by Rolle's theorem, we know that there exists a c in that open interval from a to b. There exists the value c in that open interval such that h prime of c is equal to 0. That is, there exists a c in that open interval a to b. If we rewrite this in terms of f's and g's, we end up with there exists this value of c in that open interval from a to b such that f of b minus f of a times g prime of c, I guess we would have minus g of b minus minus f of a, f prime of c. We have that's equal to 0. And so then we end up with the desired result. So if we added this part to the right-hand side, we end up with our desired result. Therefore, beautiful. So we now have Cauchy mean value theorem. That theorem is going to be useful as we try to prove L'Hopital's rule, and we will do that in the next video.